In this chapter, we'll speak about integration with Slack. Slack is not necessarily related directly to flows, but it's a very handy tool to do troubleshooting, to get messages, to build your flows. Sign up for a free Slack trial, something which is for free. You have to enter a valid email address because you will receive a confirmation code that you need to enter. So fill in my email address, click on continue. And fill in the email or the code that you receive via email. Here we go. Let's create a workspace, give it a name. I'm going to call it Flows Tutorial. And click on next. We're working on flows. Skip this step. Skip step. So now we have a Slack space with channels. Next thing that we need to do is we need to set up an API for Slack. We need to have an OAuth authentication. So just search for API Slack. There we go. Get started. It will bring up a quick start guide. On the right hand side you can see your apps. Click on create first app. Create an app. Bring up this form to help you. So from scratch. Give it a name. I'm going to call it Flows Tutorial. And I'm going to add it to my space. Okay, now if you scroll down a little bit, then you will find your client ID and client secret. So they are credentials. That's something that you will need to set up your authentication or authorization in flows. We need to give the scope as well. So let's go to auth and permissions. We need to add a redirect URL. So let's go to flows and create there a new authorization. Let's give it a name. Flows or Slack underscore flows underscore tutorial. We're going to use auth2 and we're going to use, no, not client credentials, we're going to use, or we need to use authorization code. And we need this URL as being the callback URL. So copy that URL and add it to the redirect URLs. Copy, paste, edit, save the URL. Okay. Now add a scope as well, and we're looking for the chat right that will allow us to post something in a channel. So now we have the callback URL, we have a scope as well. Okay. So back to basic information and scroll down to the credentials, copy the client ID, paste it into flows. Same thing for the client secret. Copy, paste it in there. Now we also need to provide the authorization URL and the token URL. That's something that you can find in the documentation. Just search for tokens and URL, etc. And you'll find these links. And we need to add a scope as well, of course. The scope as a chat right. And a description. I'm just going to call it chat right as well. Now let's click on authorize. Everything should be good. Authorization code, application JSON. Yeah. If you click on authorize, then you will have a pop-up appearing. Oh, actually, I've added a empty scope. Let's delete that one. Okay, click authorize again. So here we see the Slack pop-up coming, asking you, would you allow for that scope? Allow this scope. And the authorization is successful. Okay. Save it. Don't forget. It will appear now as an authorization that you can use for Slack. Let's now create a flow with Slack in there. So I'm going to go to the builder. I'm going to allocate the Slack API collection, looking for chat and chat post message. Okay, now we can select the authorization that we've just created. And in the mapping section, we need to find a channel we're going to use. Let's use the general channel to post a test message. So channel general and text test. There's one more thing that we need to do. We need to add the Flows tutorial API to the channel. So let's go to the channel and right there /invite add, and it will bring up the members. Select the Flows tutorial, and he's now added to the channel. Let's run the flow. And let's see, yes, we have received a message in the channel. Now, if you would be using Slack for other purposes than just working with flows for debugging and making your life easier, but really using it in the company, then it's good to know that there is a block kit builder that will help you to generate fancy messages, let's say, well, messages that you can send to Slack channels, like with buttons, etc. Just search for the building with block kit. And basically it will create a JSON that you can use. The one that we are using in the API here is a bit similar, but you could build your own. In the block kits, there are examples, so let's click on here. Let's scroll down a little bit. So you can see here what kind of things you can build, like buttons, date picker, images, various ways of presenting messages in Slack. If you scroll down a little bit, then you will find some examples. And you can click on the preview to see how that would look like. So this JSON would create something like this. There you see the preview, your app, and that's how the message would look like. But there are many other examples. Let's scroll down a little bit more here. Interactivity with block elements. So this would create a button, for example. Here you can see in the preview a text and a button to click on, etc. So this kit can help you to build blocks. It will create a JSON that you can then import or use in flows. So rather than all the parameters which we have here by default, you could simply change this or make a custom call, let's say, to Slack, where you can change all these details here and create a block basically that you can fill in. Okay, that concludes our Slack tutorial.